So moving quickly, lead conversion, we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about what do you do when somebody says the magic words, I'd like to sell my home. And then we're going to talk about pre-listing, which is the CMA, the preparing a packet, prepare body and mindset. Right? So that means you don't want to be hyperventilating when you see them. You don't want to pass out. I actually had an agent once faint at a listing appointment. Yeah, you know. So you might take a paper bag to breathe into, you know, your heart medicine. Do some exercise, calisthenics. Listing consultation is what we're going to talk about next week. Actually, what do you do when you're there? And we're going to go over some questions to ask. So the power of a pre-listing package, the truth is that the presentation of a pre-listing package to the seller before the appointment is a differentiating professional impact in many markets. Now, I realize, I used to do this, and I spent some time on a pre-listing package, and I realize it can't be done all the time. So let me just state what the goal is for best practices, and that is that you get something in their hands before you go there. Right? Now, if they say, I want to talk to you tonight, you can't get something in their hands. The common questions I ask, well, how do you actually get something to them before you go on the appointment? Well, one is you could drop it off at the house. Two is you could have it you could take it to their work. Three is you could have a courier take it to the work. Or if you've got other agents that work with you, you could send one of them. Right? But the idea is you want to get them a packet in advance that they could look at. And one of the reasons that we do this is because very few people do, right? Now, do you understand most real estate agents are like wallpaper, in that they're thin and they stick to the, no, it means that wallpaper is a pattern that's repeated over and over and over again. Isn't that right? And so most real estate agents are like wallpaper. They're part of a pattern that's repeated over and over and over again. And although you want to say you're different from everybody else, but if you show up and do the same things, say the same things, talk about the same things, act the same as everybody else, it's sort of hard to believe that you're different, right? So by having a pre-listing package, which why don't most agents do it? It requires effort, right? It requires effort. It requires pre-planning. It also can give you confidence because just the fact that you forced yourself to do it means you're going to be better prepared. Right? Just saying. So, you should make a pre-listing package and maintain a supply. You should make 3 or 4 of these. Because that way, I believe that you're more likely to lead generate if you know you're ready to do something with them when you've got them. Right? And for some people, if you go to the trouble of making 5 of these pre-listing packages, you're going to want to give them to people, right? Because they'll be staring at you in your office, right? Wherever you work, right? You'll see them sitting there gathering dust, right? And you're going to have this compulsion. You got to do something with it. So we're going to talk about what the package does and the contents, delivery options. And making this package, 90% is one-time and 10% customization. So I put just about everything in mind. Now, I'm not sure if I say everything I put into mind, some people say, well, I'm not going to do all that, and so they don't do anything. But one of the things that I used to do is I used to buy special paper. There's a local company called Kelly Paper, and it's NCR, no carbon retard, although nobody's used carbon paper in a long time. But you can buy it's white, yellow, white, yellow, white, yellow, right? And what you run it through a inkjet or a laser printer, and I would make copies of the listing agreement, everything already done, except for, in other words, I would have their name and their address and all the information, and except for the price and the commission, everything. Agency disclosure, transfer disclosures, all of the disclosures I wanted them to sign when they listed with me. This is something of an assumptive close because I would merge. It costs money to do this, right? You have to pay for the cost of printing them all out. It costs money. Those special. Why special paper? Because you're supposed to have give people a copy of the documents when they sign it. And if you just took one copy and had them sign it, then you have to come to the office and then you have to scan it and send it to them. And you're not, right? If you say, well, why don't I just do it electronically? That works sometimes, but it gives people an excuse not to sign right then. Right? They'll say, all right, yeah, that's fine. You can do it. Send me the electronic forms and we'll sign it tonight or tomorrow and then we'll send it back to you. Well, I would rather they signed it that night. The goal of a listing appointment is to get people to sign a listing contract that night, not tomorrow or the next day. And if you don't have the forms for them to sign, you're not going to get them to sign everything that night. The other argument that I was able to make is, look at all the work I've already done. I think I got some listings just because people felt bad that I had printed out all this stuff with their name and address and everything on it. I'm ready to go. Right? You understand? Ready to go. Yes.
So Michael, so when you go out, you've done everything except putting the listing price.
Right. I printed out the copy of the listing agreement so they could see it in advance.
That's
right?
part of the pre-listing.
That's part of the pre-listing package. The listing agreement in advance, everything filled out with the exception of the price and the commission. So I would set up in the worksheet and zip forms all their information, and I printed out the TDS, I printed out all the major disclosure forms that they were going to have to sign, and I had them, I used to go by, I started cheap, right? When we were starting cheap, you could just get a file folder. You could buy Keller Williams file folders, but if you think those are too expensive, you can go to Office Depot, Office Max, and Staples and buy cheap file folders that you can put your business card in. Then I went to the plastic binders, and I actually had tabs. You'll find that Avery makes tabs, 8, 10, 12, and more. And I took some time to make sure I had 8 things, right? And you'd print a cover sheet and put the tabs in, and I'd put things in the tabs. And then the plastic binders have a clear front, and I would have a cover sheet, a cover with a picture of the house. I'd go take a picture of the house and put that in the front so that it had a picture of their house on the front. Eventually, I went and bought photo album binders from Office Depot, Office Max, Staples. These are the ones with padding on them that are far more expensive, right? And I found that as I upgraded the quality of my package, my conversion rate was a lot higher. Just saying, start with a folder. You'll be better off than most agents. After you've sold a few homes, start to make it look fancier, right? But the question is, how bad do you want, this is what I always ask, how bad do you want them to sign this listing, right? On the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, I really want them to sign the listing, and 1 being, I don't care, where would you put yourself on that scale?
12.
What, 12? People always say that, but few people take the effort to put together a pre-listing package, right? If you really were a 10 or a 12, you would take the time to do this because this is going to increase your conversion rate. They have stuff about you and stuff about the company. It saves time when you're on the listing appointment because you've already given them stuff to read. I would give them homework to do. Most of the time, they didn't do it. Right? We have a sample sheet at Keller Williams of things that we want to know from the seller. We would like, what things would we like to know from the seller? Those of you that are online, some of you I can hear shuffling around. You can, if you have a microphone, you can participate. If you don't have a microphone, I'll take a look and see if anybody's complaining. I should do that. Nobody's complaining yet. What kinds of things would you want to know from the seller? Don't everybody blurt them out at once. Well, why are you moving? We're going to ask them that on the phone. We might ask them that on the phone. Actually, a lot of these things we might ask. Are you willing to? We might ask them that on the phone. So what I wanted to know was, first of all, I would like to know how much they owe on their house. All right, although I probably asked them that on the phone, I would like them to find their last payment coupon or whatever statement from the lender. All right, I'd like to know that. Exactly how much do they owe? All right. I didn't give them a lot of homework, but I would have a little questionnaire, and I think I have a copy of it. One of the things I'd ask them is to list, I gave them 10 spots to write all the things they liked best about that home or why they bought the home in the first place. I wanted them to tell me that. Some will, some won't. Why would we want them to tell us those things?
You could use that as a selling point later.
You could use it as a selling point. Where would we use it?
On the listing.
On the listing. See, one of the things that I always struggled with until I thought of doing this was, what do you say in the comment section on the listing? Right, when you're putting it in the computer. Most real estate agents repeat the information that's already there. Nice 4-bedroom house. Well, it already says in the MLS it's a 4-bedroom house. 2-story. It already says in the MLS it's 2 stories. In Evergreen. You know, it already says in the MLS it's an Evergreen, right? So I was always struggling to find something to say about why that house is a nice house other than the bare information. And then I'd say, why don't I let the sellers tell me why they think their house is a nice house? And then I would use what they said, not only on the comments of the MLS, but on the property flyer. Do you think they liked it? Right? First of all, they liked it. Second of all, they might have be better at this than I am. All right? They just might be. All right, so a little bit of seller homework. There are more things you could do. The package does, it opens communication with the prospect and immediately increases their confidence in you. You're paying more attention, you're being more professional, you're being more prepared. Provides data or document they need to gather in advance. I asked them questions about, have you done remodeling, and, you know, save time in the consultations. Lets C and S disc profiles dig into data on their own time. I used to print out graphs and charts and all the stuff, everything that had happened. I'm going to go through the list eventually. One of the things I'd print out is everything that happened in the last 90 days in that zip code. Right? There's an easy report you can get in the MLS that does that. Everything that happened in the last 90 days in that zip code. Everything that happened. Right? And I would stick that in one of the tabs. Now, why would we want everything that happened in that zip code in the last 90 days? Whether they were like that house or not. Anybody want to? Everything, let's say it's 95123, I ran everything that happened in 95123 in the active listing, sold, canceled, expired, withdrawn, everything that happened in the last 90 days.
Good information for them to have.
Maybe good information for them to have.
They also would be able to look at the pricing range for them.
Pricing range, perhaps, too. We're going to give them CMA information. Have you ever thought that a seller, I had sellers that would say things to me, well, I heard that the Andersons got 640 when they sold their home, right? And that's not in our neighborhood, but it's a little further over, and there it is. And I'd say, oh, actually, no, they didn't get 640. Is that right? No, that's not what they got, right? You understand? Because if they start throwing out questions about who got what and when and where, doing the research on right then and there may be difficult. C and S, if you're not into disc profiles, especially C's like data. Engineers, right? The idea that I had graphs and charts and data and all this kind of stuff, they would read and read and read and read and go through it.
They're looking for your mistakes.
Right. The D and I's, I had people ask me if they could have copies of the spreadsheets. I had engineers say, can you email me a copy of your spreadsheets? I'd say, sure. Right. But we can do this very easily. Now, D's and I's don't care. Right. You understand? You know, a D only needs to know that if the chart's going up, it's good, and if it's going down, it's bad. That's about as far as they can get into it, right? But why not do this? Could you spend a lot of time at a listing presentation talking to an engineer about the data? Let them look at it first. Prepares them for the consultation. A statement of UPS. Wait a second. The UPS? USP, that's not the same thing as UPS? UPS is the guys you have drop off the package. What is a USP? United States of Portugal. Uniform Service Protocol. Unique selling proposition. Right? Where is that discussed in our training program? It's in Ignite Lesson 1. All right? A value proposition. Unique selling proposition. Both of those are discussed in Lesson 1 of Ignite. So you might want to describe this now. This, by the way, makes the listing presentation go a lot smoother. So, examples, a USP, and you're going to get a copy of this as soon as I'm done. I'll put it on, do the one thing. Your biography, sample, brand, advertising. On the scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you want this listing? 12. So if you've not sold homes recently or ever, you ought to make some flyers using the Michael Lewis, because you're right in front of me. I'll hide my face. Using the Michael Lewis Marketing Suite, which they have access at both market centers, right? Michael Lewis Marketing Suite, you ought to get a listing, a nice looking listing in the market center, and make a flyer with your name, phone number, and contact information on it that you could show as a sample. It wouldn't hurt for you to have 3 or 4 different layouts as samples that you could show people. Well, you might want to tell the listing agent you're doing this. Most of them don't care. You could pick ones that have already sold. The idea is you could show them samples of the advertising. What is going to look like. Now, by the way, in my farm, when I would go to Almaden or to Blossom Valley, what I had were actual flyers of listings that I had sold. Every time I sold a house, I kept the flyer, and I made a whole bunch of extra copies, and I would put it in the binder so they could go through and look at all these properties. Right? You understand that a listing appointment, what you're getting the seller to do, is to buy an intangible. Your promise to provide a service in the future. The more tangible representation you have of what that's going to look like, the easier it's going to be to sell. Sample of advertising. Just listed, just sold, open house, make some samples, right? I would do it on more than one property.
What if you don't have any?
You would borrow somebody else's. Ask a listing agent. They're all ours in a sense, right? You understand? You're not advertising the listing, right? You're not really saying it's yours, right? The word you'd use is, these are some of the properties we've sold. We, because the listings technically belong to Keller Williams Realty, Silicon Valley, San Jose, Gateway, whoever, right? They don't belong to the individual salesperson. I'm telling you, it'll be a lot easier to get them to sign the listing if you have samples of what your flyers are going to look like, rather than just samples of what the flyers are going to look like. Find homes with nice pictures and use the Michael Lewis Marketing Suite because it looks better. Make some sample flyers that you could show, different layouts, different postcards, different, all those things. Make samples. Information about your assistant or team. How many of you have a team? Really? We got one guy with a team. So you don't have a listing coordinator. You don't have a transaction coordinator. We don't have one. You never met Lindsay in the office? You've met her, right? If you had a listing, you're not going to let Lindsay coordinate your transaction?
I didn't know what Lindsay would do.
She's a transaction coordinator.
Okay.
Right? You don't
have the team.
Right. You have So you would you have a transaction coordinator, correct?
Would that be Lindsay or somebody else?
Lindsay. It's going to be Lindsay. Right? It's going to be Lindsay. Do you have you met a friendly escrow agent or title rep?
Yeah.
Have you met an unfriendly one?
No.
No. Right? Would they like to be on your team?
That would be good.
You would think they would? Would they like you to open escrow with them? Right? Would they be willing to say that they would be your escrow officer, the title rep? Do you understand? You have a team, whether you know it or not. There are loan people. Do you know any loan people? Would they like to help you?
Sure.
Right. So, do you understand what we're talking about takes a little bit of work, right? Because I'm asking you to collect these things, get pictures of the people, and put them on part of your flyer that you can put in your pre-listing package, right? Testimonials. Well, do you know anybody? Some of you haven't sold a house, right? First of all, if you have somebody who sells a house, you ought to ask them for a testimonial. Let's say you have never sold a house. Do you know anybody that would be willing to say they know you have worked with you and would recommend you to anyone who's thinking of buying or selling real estate? Think of people that owe you money. Start with, right? I would start with them. Family members, dependents, anybody like that, right? So could you find some people that were willing to write something? They don't have to say that you sold their house,
No.
right? But that they've known you for a long time and worked with you, and that they would recommend anybody thinking about buying or selling a house to use your services, right? Could you do that? Right? Would that look better than having nothing? Yeah. Value proposition would be a marketing plan. We're going to talk more about that next week. Sample property advertising, brand advertising. These are, I sort of merged the two together. Sales statistics. Where would we get easy to find sales statistics? MLS. Be more specific. The Realtor Property Resource. Information about Keller Williams, just listed, just sold cards. How I stay in touch, that's, by the way, some standard material. Easy out, cancellation, guaranteed sale program, etc. All right. Yeah, question.
You gotta give us a copy of that.
Which?
Easy out.
I think so. I have one. Easy out.
All of this is available, right?
Yeah, I will. I have an easy out. Most of these are, the easy out cancellation is mentioned in the standard Keller Williams listing presentation material. And guaranteed sale program is one where you say, if I don't sell the house in 60 days, I'll do it for free. And easy out cancellation says if you decide you don't want to work with me, you can cancel the listing agreement. You have to give me a week's notice or something like that. I will find copies of those and put them on that site. They're easy to find. They all say the same thing. Mine had a picture of a house with chains around it. And it said that if you decide you don't want to work with me, you can cancel. Right. This, by the way, first of all, can help with to get the listing and overcoming objections. If you're not happy with my services, you can fire me and fire somebody else. If I don't do what I say I'm going to do, get rid of me. Right. Secondly, most agents, you understand, that's not what the listing agreement says by default. The listing agreement says nobody can cancel no matter what. That's what it says. Right. And that if they try to withdraw the property from sale, they owe you a commission, full commission. So some agents sign people up for 6 months or a year, leaving that in. And so what I would do if somebody says, well, he said that he could get me $780, and you say it's only $680, but he says he's got a buyer, and they already say they're going to give us $780, so we're going to list with him. And I would say, I understand how you feel, right? I mean, you want to get the most money possible, right, from the sale of your house. That's how most people would look at it. But what I've found is that sometimes, I'm not saying this guy, but sometimes people say that and they don't really have a buyer, right? You understand? And then what happens is they're going to let you down. They're going to say, oh, well, the buyer, he bought something else, or he had a medical emergency and had to fly back to Hong Kong, or, he just got, something went wrong and the buyer's not going to buy the house, and then they'll work on you to lower your price back down to where I told you it was, and they're going to grind on you for the next few months. Why don't you do this easy out agreement? Make sure they give you one, right? Make sure they give you one. Here's mine. Make sure they sign one similar, because if it turns out that what they said wasn't true, you can get out, right? You understand how that could help you. Guaranteed sales, I already explained that. I can get you copies. By the way, how else could you find, without me finding them, copies of these agreements? Google. What website do you go to do that? Google, right? But I'm going to Google them also. If you put in Keller Williams, you'll find ones with the logo. Education for the sellers. I'm going to put my book, I'm going to remove the Century 21 logos from it. But I had a stuff. Will the title companies give you information about the home selling process? Diagrams, booklets, articles, PDFs? Will they let you download them and print them out? What do you think? Yeah? They might even give you copies. Do you think they might actually give you copies? Who else might give you stuff? Home warranty companies? Loan companies? Do you understand when you meet these people, should you start collecting stuff? Right? So you can put stuff, you don't have to write it all, you don't have to print it all. Right? You have to collect it. And the ways to handle competing, we'll maybe talk about that later. These are agent interview questions. You're probably not going to do that unless you've been around for a while, right? But you understand these are tougher questions, right? So I'm not going to go through those. Memorable value added, but I'm going to put this list up. Memorable value adding item. Staging, marketing. Some agents pay for staging. I used to not pay for staging. Right? I know that's considered a vogue thing to do, but could you find information about how to get your house ready to sell, tips for cleaning up the house, that sort of stuff? Could you find stuff on the internet from companies for free that you could put in your binder? So you would have, this is what, I like this list. I put in a sample. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible that you could ask the seller to pay for staging?
I ask the seller to pay for staging. By the way, they've done, there are a variety of studies that seem to show stagers can show you studies that show that staging gets you more money. There's some evidence that it doesn't. Right? I'm just saying it's not. But I don't believe I ever paid for staging. The reason, most stagers want to be paid up front, right? They don't want to be paid out of escrow. So unless the seller was interested in doing that, I wasn't interested. Now, when you have, if you're closing a couple of transactions a month, you might want to add that as a reason to hire me, but I would not do that, yeah.
One of our realtors, once he gets the contract, and he goes over everything, he will pay it. No, they pay up front, and he reimburses them.
Yeah, for those of you online, they pay up front, and they get the agent gets reimbursed at the close. That's what you do if you have more money than the seller. All right.
Exactly.
If you've got more money than the seller, then this is a good idea. Some of you may not have more money than the seller. So I wouldn't necessarily get into it. If you were to Google search, there's an article that came out recently that seems to show that staged homes don't sell for more money than non-staged homes, right? And in some of the reasons, I'm just saying this is something to think about. But giving them tips. Now, by the way, staging works a lot better in a vacant house. And you don't have to stage every room, right? But so we'll come to that at another point, right? But I wouldn't pay for I wouldn't pay for a couple of grand in staging up front if I were you guys, right? After you close some, maybe. What would you put in the pre-listing? A sample sales contract. That's the purchase agreement. Why? Because I wanted them to read it before the first offer. Right? I wanted them to read it before they got the offer. I hear a lot of shuffling of papers in the background.
For them reading it before they got it?
So if they have questions about the purchase agreement, they could ask you before the first offer. Right? rather than at the top. So otherwise, if they're asking you to explain every line that night, you could be there for 4 hours. Some do. C's and S's read it. D's and I's do not. But I've had engineers go through, circle, and write notes on the side to ask me questions. Right? Even if you're a D and not into reading, is it possible that simply seeing all this stuff will make you understand the complexity of the transaction, and maybe they shouldn't go with the cheapest person? Explanation of the listing process, a seller net sheet, right, which a title company can help you with, accurate pricing, pricing misconception, myths about why home sells. You can have pricing and staging DVDs. Do people use DVDs? I don't know. You could have YouTube links, value of inspections, appraisals, and warranties. Right? Sample inspection reports. Can you get sample inspection reports? How would you find a sample termite or one of those reports? You Google search sample termite report. Right? I have some, by the way, that I've collected. Preparing your home for sale checklist. Delivery options. How do you get this packet to them as soon as you possibly can? You, a teammate, or a messenger at their workplace, have someone sign for it. Top agents report a dramatic decrease in time spent to get the listings if they use a pre-listing package. All right? So this is our summary of what we talked about. Now, I'm going to put this on, do I want to make sure? No, I didn't make any really changes. I'm going to put this on our, see if I haven't lost too many people. Everybody seems to be there. I'm going to put these slides, if you would like them, on the do the one thing. What I'm going to do.
If I can make a comment right now.
No.
We're doing this. We've been working to get listings by calling, walking around, everything else. And all of this information sounds like we should have had this way before we started calling. And
I've covered this information, by the way. A lot of what I'm going over is covered in Ignite, and I covered it about 6 months ago in another coaching program. I have videos to prove it.
I believe.
Yeah, but so I do understand that. But what I challenge people for, and you might not have been here when I did it last.
6 months ago, no, I wasn't here.
Yeah, so you may but what I challenged people to do at that time was to put together packages, and some agents actually did so and showed them to me, which is what I would recommend that you do, and so that you've got your package together in advance. All right. Now, what would happen in reality right now, for those of you that have mentors, if you got a listing appointment, somebody who's already got this sort of worked out would go with you, right? So it's not, you don't have to be desperate about it, but you're going to, at some point, need to be ready to do it on your own, right? Okay. So what other wonderful things? The other thing I wanted, there's something called the listing lead sheet, which I've already put on your site. What I'm going to do is, well, because it's easier for me to do it while I'm thinking about it, because I don't always think about it. So I'm putting, that handout is now there. So what the listing lead sheet is there's a form very similar to this in Ignite. This particular version of the form comes from Seller Mastery, and I started to make it a form where sometimes people say, well, how do you get their names of their children and that sort of thing, but it depends on how conversational you are, right? You know, do you have kids? Oh, really? That's wonderful. What are their names? How old are they? What are their names? Right? Do you think most parents would tell you? Right? Street address. Why would we want to know that? I didn't quite hear it. You could send them stuff, maybe. What are the 4 stages of a sale? Stage 1 is rapport. Stage 2 is qualify, which means ask questions. 3 is to show, and 4 is to close. So the first step is rapport. Would it help your rapport if you knew the names of the kids? Perhaps. When one of them runs up and kicks you, you know which one it was. So you want their name, their email, because you might. By the way, you could deliver some of this by email, but the book is better. Street address, phone, work, best way to get in touch with you, spouse's name, spouse's cell phone, best, Now, I actually had an agent who was almost suicidal. She had been farming an area. Somebody called and said, I want to sell my home. Great. When would you like to meet? Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Wonderful. I'll be there. Hung up, and then realized that she hadn't gotten their name, address, phone number, and right. So you want to have a form like this handy. Do you understand? And so these are some questions asked. Why are you moving? You could use slightly different words. I used to say, why are you thinking of selling your home at this time? That was my question. Is that an important thing to know?
It may.
It may. Is their motivation going to be important as to whether or not they're going to sign tonight at a good price with a right?
Sure, they probably got a job somewhere else. They got to move.
Sometimes they just want to move.
Yeah.
They're just. Where are you moving to? Are you already working with an agent? Now, you may find that an odd question because why would they be calling you if they're already working with an agent? Not everybody's happy with their agent. Sometimes their listing is about to expire, right? You'll notice, so people say, oh, you can't talk to them until the listing is expired. That's not true. It's not true. You can talk to people before the listing is expired. You just can't tell them, call the agent, cancel the listing, relist with me, right? But you'll notice that most expired listings are relisted the next day. They expire at midnight, right? So those that expire at midnight tonight, many of them are listed tomorrow morning. How did that happen? Did the agent go there after midnight and talk to them?
Or camped out.
No, they talked to him 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
And they signed the listing 2 weeks ago saying it's going to start the next day. So are you working, you'll find that you're going to get more yeses than you thought was possible. If yes, have you signed an agreement? Some people, by the way, have signed a 6-month listing agreement, and many people do not understand that the listing agreement says you cannot cancel. That you can't fire your agent. Many people do not understand that. How soon do you need to be there? You'll be corporate relocation assistance. If that's a question. If they're moving, that's a good thing to know because the corporate relocation companies have a hand sometimes in and they may want a referral fee. Are you thinking about selling your home on your own? Why would we ask that? I hear a lot of shuffling going on in the background for those of you online. Why would we ask them the question about for sale by owner? Maybe they hadn't even thought of it, and then now we mentioned it, and now they're going to do it. Shouldn't we be worried about that? First of all, if they are thinking about it, they've already thought of it, right? Now, why would we ask them? Right? I don't believe that we don't mention it because they haven't thought about it, and if we don't mention it, they wouldn't know about it. That's not it. Why would we ask them about this? For sale by owner.
Maybe they want to save the commission.
Yeah, but why are they talking to us? Do you know what it says on for sale by owner websites? Tips to sell your home on your own. Call real estate agents up. Call 3 of them. have them come over, give you a market analysis and all of their suggestions for getting their home ready, then do it yourself. Right? And there are people that will say, yeah, I'm going to sell it myself. But they told me that I had to have a real estate agent come over and give me a CMA. So that's why I'm doing this. Right? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being extremely, how motivated are you to sell your house? What will happen if your home does not sell in the required amount of time? And if you can get an idea from this what their disc profile is, you might want to circle, right? And we're going to spend, I can't do all that now, but we spend, if you were to, how would you find information on identifying disc profiles? Anybody have a thought?
A couple of questions that you can ask.
How would, let's say you don't even know what an I and an S is. How would you learn about this? So, and let's say you're really interested. How would you learn about it? You'd Google it. Really? Are you going to find videos? And yeah, you're going to find like a whole bunch of stuff, more than you ever wanted to know. Tell me a little bit about your house. One of the questions that I would ask if they don't is, have you done any significant remodeling since you bought it? One of the things you're going to notice is that they're going to say the house is 4 bedrooms and 3 baths. And you look it up on the public records and it says it's 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, right? And
when did you add the 3rd bath?
And the other 4th bedroom. It could mean they had work done without permits. But if you do a CMA for a 3-2 and they have a 4-3, are you going to be off the mark when you get there? Right? Do you understand? How many square feet, how many stories, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how many years have you owned the house? Have you done any updates? Does it have a pool? Yes?
What do we do about permits?
The question is, what do you do about permits? First of all, you can do what's called a permit search, where you do that from the city, and they'll give you a copy of all the permits. You can do that. You can institute it online. If there's discrepancies, i.e. there are permits that were started but not finalized, you open what's called an investigation. It's a simple thing to do, and then the people at the building department will actually issue a written, this is what needs to be done in order to get the permit signed off. If we're questioning about it, the idea is we're not required to do research. However, I would do it because the buyer's going to, I would assume the buyer's going to find out that there's no permits.
So what's the problem with that?
The problem with not have, what are the problems that could happen with no, if you don't have any permits? We used to use,
as long as everything else is okay, the switches work and the water flows, the bathroom flushes.
see if do I still have my lack of permit disclosure? We used to make people, what could happen? Number one, worst case scenario, they could make them remove whatever it was they built without the permits. Worst case scenario, they have to remove it. They have to tear down the additional bedroom, family room, or whatever and get rid of it.
When they convert a garage into 2 bedrooms.
They don't get permits for converting garages. So they're going to have to remove it. They're going to have to bring it up to code if possible. They're going to have to pay extra fees. But people buy homes without permits. But should you tell the buyer that there aren't any permits for this?
Yeah.
Right, you can do a permit search. Well, we can talk about that later. Rate your home on a scale of 1 to 10. What would make it a 10? Do you understand? We're really will this information help us do a CMA? How much do you think your house is worth? Right? I've had people say, well, I think we're going to get like $625. Okay. That's nice. That's good to know. Right? Because when we do a CMA, you'll see you can sort of make it come out that way. How much do you owe? How much do you want to net? Are you up to date on your payments? Are you the sole owner? If not, who's on title? Do you have other investment? How did you hear about our team? What are the 3 things you expect from a realtor? Are you setting other appointments? With who and when? Let's set an appointment meets and find out exactly what you want. The appointment should last 30 minutes to an hour. We'll go through the home selling process and talk about your expectations and your goals. So this is an alternative goals. I used to say, are weekdays or weekends better for you? You'd say, well, weekdays. Right? Well, during the day or in the evening? In the evening. Would 7 or 8 be better? Right? Do you understand what we're doing is, rather than saying, would 7:45 Friday evening work? No. Oh, okay. Right? We're trying to avoid that. And we write down the appointment date. Is everybody with me on that? Okay. Now, we're coming up to our appointed time. One of the other goodies that I've shared with you are what are called seller mastery scripts, which are on the Do the One Thing site already. And there are a whole bunch of them about getting the listing, mindset before the appointment. Let's just there's a whole bunch of these, including expired listings. Let me find, since we're doing before, get the listing, confirm the appointment. So what you want to do is, before you go, confirm that you have an appointment that day. I went to a listing appointment one time and there was a for sale sign in the front yard. Yeah, it wasn't mine. I was the last one, and they had, by the way, I learned to carry a for sale sign in my trunk. They have these ones that you can push into the ground. It's not the big one with the post, because I would put it in that night as I left. It was like the
If you got a sign listed, you can put anything you want. Right?
Well, yeah, and it would to keep other people away. But so you might want to call and confirm the appointment to make sure that they remember that. I mean, you think, how could they forget? This is really important. Well, it is to you, maybe not to them. Did I catch you bedtime? We'll be able to be a meeting at. Will you be able to fill out the paperwork I sent? I'd like to confirm your address. Any questions I can answer when I see you? Anyhow, notice that if I'm able to answer them, do you think you'll be ready to list with me? Yes, question. So they say they're up to date, but the prelim says they're not. The prelim isn't going to tell you about the up to date on their payments unless a notice of default or notice of sale has been issued. It's not going to say that. I would ask to see their last statement. Remember, that's one of the things that I would ask them to collect. Other things you might ask them to collect are utility bills and things like that. Right? Now, I used to collect all that stuff. It's possible that this might come up in the buyer wants to know what is it going to cost to heat the place, but there's another issue which is related to septic tanks. We're in Campbell right now. A lot of homes in Campbell that were built in tracts had originally septic tanks because they put in the properties before city sewer. So then when the city sewer came in, they would go to each of the homeowners and ask, do you want to be connected? To be connected, you had to hire a guy to dig a ditch, all right, and lay the pipes. And a lot of people, many people, not most, but enough people said, I'm happy with the septic tank. Did you know that there are septic tanks in tract homes in Campbell? I don't know if you knew that. Would this be a material fact to a buyer? Where is the sewer bill included?
In the water bill.
In the water bill, right? And so would you like to take a peek at their water bill to see if it actually mentions sewer? Because I've had people say, oh yeah, we're connected to city sewer. No, they're not. Right? And they didn't want to tell anybody because people didn't want to buy the house. Mindset. The listing is mine if I want it. Right? You don't want all of them. I know when you're new, you think, how could I not want a listing? You haven't had enough listings yet. But there are some you will not want. These sellers are making a mistake if they select anybody but me to represent them. I'm a lean, mean listing machine. All right, and then what we're going to do, what I also, how many of you feel comfortable with the realtor doing a CMA? Anybody here want to? We've got, anybody? Everybody?
What was the question?
To do a comparative market analysis. What I would like everyone to do is to pick a single family house. It could be where you live. Why not? You probably want to know. And do a CMA on it. And bring it next week. Because I have a reason for it. And what I would recommend that you do, and I want to do this without me having to do it first, I guess, is use the Realtor Property Resource. Does everybody understand how to get to that? Does anybody not know? You don't know? So you log into reil.com or you log into the MLS.
Okay.
By the way, you guys ought to log into the MLS every day until you don't have to look up your DRE number. Right? People say, "Oh,
I mean, you memorized.
If you logged into the MLS every day, you would know your DRE number." Right? Agents that when somebody doesn't know their DRE number, then I know there's a problem. So I'm logging in. I have special powers to log in as anybody. All right. So I'm logging in for you. RPR record search. All right. I don't want to go on for more than an hour, but give me. You haven't signed up yet.
No,
No. How would I know that?
because it's not there.
It's not there. I don't think you've signed up yet. But you might have. If you haven't, you're going to click on create a new account. If you have, you're going to sign in.
I thought it would be automatic
No.
since you're MLS already.
No. It's not automatic. So for those of you that are online, if when you go through what I just did and you click on it and you see this screen, create a new account, go to the trouble of doing it. Right? Because this is going to make your life a whole lot easier when you have a listing appointment. It's going to make everything a whole lot easier. Plus, we're going to use it in doing the pre-listing information and things like that. It lets you do a nice looking net sheet. There's a whole bunch of things, but you need to be able to log into RPR.
So you can do CMA from there.
Right. Right. We're going to talk. Next week. I'll talk about the CMA. This is probably going to go into 3 sessions, right? Because the CMA is not as easy as some people. Oh, that's going to be easy. It's not that easy, right? And so we're going to. We may spend next week doing the CMA, and then the week after that, we're going to practice what we say on the listing appointment. Does that sound like fun? I hope so. Any questions from the? Have you ever seen an RPR report?
No.
Well, then I know you hadn't, because if you had, you would not have asked that question. But what it does, first of all, I've been teaching RPR classes for a decade. And what happens is that many experienced agents still don't know what it is. At Gateway, Christine hadn't used it. Right? A lot of experienced agents have not used it, which means they use I don't think looks very well, but they use the one that's built into Matrix, which every other agent uses. In other words, your CMA looks like every other CMA. Right? How about that? Now, what I've done is, let me see if I can find one that I ran recently. I did one on Santa Clara County. Here, I did one for 95124. I haven't ran one for but a seller report, for example, is the full thing is 75 pages. You don't have to print it all out if you don't want to. It's got information about the property. It's got a bunch of things about marketing pictures and more. It's got property history. It's got graphs and charts, heat maps, and information on all of the comps. And you don't necessarily, we're going to talk next week about how to trim it down so you only print out the parts that you want, but this produces a CMA on steroids, right? Way, way better looking and more complete than what MLS Matrix uses, which is what real estate agents don't like learning curves. That's an understatement, right? They don't. So when they learn how to do something, they are extremely reluctant, by and large, to learn how to do it a different way. Right? So agents that have been in the business a long time generally do not know how to use the realtor property resource. Right? Which gives you an advantage. Because your CMA is going to look way better than theirs.
In some open houses that I've done, I've seen a booklet that thick with all this stuff.
Right. That's a different thing. That comes into servicing the listing, is what we put a binder inside the property that has the disclosures and the reports and a comparable information that shows that the price we listed at that, this may be where they got it from. Right? You understand? This could be used to just, by the way, a property report, which is a long version, there's a mini property report, would be useful for you when you're writing an offer. Right? It's basically a, from the buyer's perspective, a market activity report. Remember I said whatever happened in the last 90 days in a particular zip code? That does it. A neighborhood report is information about specifically what's going on. That one has a list of the properties. The market activity report is just doesn't have individual listings that have sold, but what's just going on in the market. All of these, by the way, are extremely useful for you to use in terms of doing newsletters and as information to put in your pre-listing book. How would you find how to use the NAR RPR? Wow, there's an NARRPR.com. I wonder if that's what related. I'm already logged in, so why don't I just say NAR RPR? If I separate them, there's a blog. Wow, training, learning. Wow, if I were to say I'm interested in videos, wow, you understand you ought to spend a little bit of time to learn how to use RPR. It's, how bad on a scale of 1 to 10 do you want to get the listing? 12. Would you want to have the best looking CMA you could? All right. That's all. Next week we're going to talk about the CMA, and then we're going to get ready for the listing presentation itself, and then the week after that we're actually going to practice questions to ask and how we would do the best we could to get the listing. Any questions from those of you online? Oh, I see a chat. I have to run. See you tomorrow at the farm meeting. Tomorrow is a farm meeting at 11 o'clock at the Market Center. For those of you that want to grow vegetables, zucchini, I think we're going to talk about zucchini tomorrow. Maybe not. So this is about working a geographic farm. We're going to talk tomorrow about how to pick one, how to develop one, and we're going to meet every week.
Where's that?
In here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
What time?
11 o'clock. It's on the schedule. Yeah.
So what is the importance of the seller being current on all their mortgage?
Why is it important that they're current on everything? The answer is I've had people that when you don't pay your loan payments, they add the interest to the principal. And so I've had it where they now needed to do a short sale because by the time they sold the house, they owed so much. Also, the question is if it's in a homeowner association, are they up on their HOA dues? I've had people that owed 20, 30 grand to the homeowners association, and that has to be paid off for title to transfer. And so if they owe $100,000 on their loan and $30,000 on their homeowner association, they may not be able to sell it without permission from the bank.